Hello, everybody. It's me, Carmine Stefano, the bookman. I've been meaning to talk about this for a while, and before I begin, I want to warn everybody. I am not trying to be inflammatory. I'm not trying to insult anybody, but I will sound very condescending. And the reason is because this whole thing about critiquing, writing, and everything, it's not just that I have 3 books on Kindle published, which you can find on Amazon, kdpamazon.com. Just look at my name, Carmine DeStefano, or you can look up Bliss, The Ravine, or Behind Closed Doors, and you'll find it. It's not just so much that. I studied this in college. And when I was growing up and you actually had to go to school with standards here in the United States and academic fundamentals, we had to learn about writing as well. The simple basics, the 101 on writing, storytelling, story crafting, and what exactly made books, literature, movies, cinematics, whatever, what made it art. And the thing about art is, the word gets thrown around like a lot of words here in the United States because the United States is filled with pretentious, pathetic fucking losers that want to think they're better than everybody else for whatever reason. So art and artist gets thrown around whether you're some person that makes noise and they call it music, or you're some idiot that makes movies and they call it cinema. Whatever the case, the United States sucks. But what I'm saying is that in terms of the actual art forms that are being produced, the major problem is that you don't have artists. You don't have people that are studied, well put together projects that actually make well put together projects. What you have is a bunch of rich liberal arts assholes who spent most of their time in college smoking a joint, trying to get laid, partying, and every now and then going to class, got a degree because their parents paid their way through it, and now they think that they're geniuses. Well, the biggest problem with that is not so much the people that are behind the product. See, because your whole point, especially here in the United States, is to sell. And they sell. And boy, they spend a lot of money selling. And another thing you have to understand when it comes to movies, not so much books, but movies, is that there are going to be a lot of plot holes. And I think when it comes to video games too at this point, because there are so many hands involved. When you make a movie, you have a producer, you have a director, you have all these executives and everything like that. You have the company itself, the distributor, and you have the person writing. But even the person writing is more or less a person managing a committee that's writing. And then those writers, more or less, I'm not saying everybody, I'm saying more or less, especially the big ones, they then have to conform to what the distributors and the productions and the directors and all, they all have to come together. And typically when that happens, there are broken holes in the plot. And the reason why I'm saying all this to you is because what I hear when I watch videos from the top flight critics here on YouTube is I hear a lot of bitching and moaning from people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And it bothers me because you have to understand something. If you have a channel that's popular, not a channel like mine where you don't even have 400 subscribers and maybe 3 people who watch this, when you have a channel that has hundreds of thousands of subscribers, millions of views on your videos, and you have people trending everything that you post on Twitter and social media and everything, do you know what happens? The people in Hollywood who are lazy cocksuckers, they're going to read and hear what you say, and then they're going to take it to heart because they think you speak for the majority. And seeing as how so many people are watching your videos, they're not wrong in that assessment. So I applaud everybody that speaks out against the big corporations like Warner Brothers or Disney or whatever when they make shitty movies, because it is really, really reprehensible that big companies are going to pay millions of dollars, make all of us spend at least $8, $9, $10, depending on where we live here in the United States. Mostly it's going to be like $14 and up. And forget if you want to go to IMAX, you might as well fucking mortgage a house, if there are even movie theaters anymore. Whatever the case, they do not have the right to make shit. Not at all. Especially when cinema and stuff like that moves culture in a way that pretty much determines the entire society as a whole in more ways than one down the road, years to come. And that's just a fact. That's what art does. So yes, I applaud you. One problem. When you tell me that the new Disney Star Wars are bad because they have too many political views and Rey's a Mary Sue, or you don't like the new Mulan release because Mulan she was too perfect, or you didn't like the prequels because Anakin, he was whiny and he was a Mary Sue, and all this other bullshit. When you just complain about individual characters, sorry about the phone, when you complain about individual characters, characters do not make the movie. Characters do not make the storyline. What makes the movie, what makes the storyline, is the fucking storyline. What stories were meant to do was they were meant to give people a concept of life, a moral. There had to be some kind of reason behind the storyline, some sort of theme or plot. There also had to be a rhythm and a consistency in the overall construction of the universe. You wouldn't make a story about driving to work and the office and base it on reality and then out of nowhere have fucking alien spaceships just show up and start abducting people. You wouldn't do that per se unless that was the point of the storyline. This is the thing that I said with my factual retelling of exactly why the Metal Gear Solid series is shit, about how they were trying to base everything in reality while talking about machinery and technology that had never even been thought of before. And assessing magic powers in what was current events or historical events through nanotechnology, which nobody came up with, even to this point. See, that's a very muddled and confused narrative, because you have no idea what the fuck you're trying to do. And when you're making it seem all serious and everything, but then you're making jokes of stuff and making light of other things, it's just all over the place and it's nonsensical. And yes, I do know what the creator, who had no idea what the storyline was doing while he was creating it, was trying to say. When I say it doesn't make sense, is based on what you're putting together. What you've completed is not making sense. And what you're trying to do is not making sense based on what you're trying to put together. But again, when you make these things popular, and when you go and see these movies, and when you go and buy these shitty video games, or when you go and talk about whatever it is that is related to story crafting and art, and you then complain about individual characters as opposed to the overall storyline, what you're allowing is you're allowing these creators to make shitty storylines. Because as long as they know what you didn't like in these characters, they can just change the characters. And before you blame boogeymen or dark entities like Amanda Sarkeesian or whatever the other fuck you want to blame it on, blame yourselves. Because you're the ones that complain about the dumbest fucking things based on the characters. So if you like the characters, the movie can be a complete mess. Like The Force Awakens was a complete disaster. Everything about that movie was garbage. And you all enjoyed it because you liked the characters. Because it brought back Luke and Han and Leia. Who gives a fuck about them? They're shitty characters in the first place. They were probably well acted, but they were shitty characters. However, since they were brought back, you love the idea. But then, once they got more and more pushed in the background and their characters sort of changed from what you loved or what you thought you loved, and I still dare all of you to watch the original series in its purest form with all the puppets and everything, like you all think they were just these spectacular, and just see how long you can stand watching one of them before you fall asleep. Because I guarantee your nostalgia is not 2020. But whatever the case, when they started pushing those characters in the back and showing you their incapacity to make good movies, then you started complaining. But mostly because of the characters you didn't like. Same thing with all the dumbass Jurassic Park movies, same thing with this fucking King Kong vs. Godzilla. If it weren't for the characters in the movies being bad characters, you would have zero complaints or very little. It's not until they make bad characters that you then have complaints. And then you nitpick like sons of bitches. It's like the same reason why you think Wonder Woman was such a great movie, but Captain Marvel was shit. No, you got that wrong. Captain Marvel was a good movie. I don't care if you don't like Brie Larson, that's your personal opinion. And here's the fact. The fact is, I give you facts. You give opinions. And that's not critiquing. That's opinions. See, this is why I do respect the 21 kiloton, because right away he'll say, this is my opinion. What I'm giving you, facts. Because tell me I'm wrong when you listen to these critics. The first thing they said about, because I was anticipating watching Mulan reviews because I can't stand Disney. I despise Disney. And everything they do, all they do is corrupt everything, make it shit. And they used to be the ones that actually made good movies at one point. But I was so looking forward to hearing reviews about Mulan. And what I hear? Well, in the original Mulan, I don't give a fuck about the original Mulan. The original Mulan had nothing to do with the original Mulan storyline from Chinese lore. The only thing that they had in common was there was a woman named Mulan and she lived in China. That was pretty much it. But the original storyline, because mythology and folklore and everything, did have people that were just born better in physical or mental or emotional ways that they could handle certain things. The original storyline was that a woman that had been born with special talents, who was well trained, took the place of her father and her brother to protect her family during a war, and after 10 years rose up to the rank of general without anyone being any the wiser. That was the original idea. Not a woman who just didn't feel comfortable wearing makeup and putting on a dress, trying to act like a man in a Bad News Bears version of Mulan, where this underwhelming bunch of bumbling jerk-offs decided to find a way to fight together because this one woman who couldn't walk straight trying to be a man, that had nothing to do with Mulan. The new version kind of did. Now, if you want to say the new version of Mulan sucked ass because they didn't know how to write a movie and they didn't establish anything and the whole portrayal of what was going on was completely batshit crazy and suddenly there was a sorceress that came out of nowhere, fine, that's a good idea. Then complain about that. Put them to task. Don't accept shit from those that are paying so much money to make these things and charging you so much money. This is what I've been saying to you for years. You misconstrue because you keep doing the same things over and over again. You keep taking this shit personally. This is not about you. This is about universal acceptance, fundamentals, things that you have to achieve and things you have to earn in order for you to be called an artist, in order for your art to be considered respectable. This has nothing to do with every single individual fan and what every single individual fan wants to see in themselves on the screen or on television or when they're playing a fucking video game. For instance, you couldn't stand The Last of Us 2, right? But The Last of Us 1 was a masterpiece? You must be fucking off your rocker. The Last of Us 1 sucked too. I told you that in my review. Yes, it had a nice little impact, but once you were done with the first playthrough and you knew where the storyline was going, it was a boring fucking third-person shooter. That's all it was. How can that be a masterpiece if it's a video game? And by the way, please explain to me, before you even start trying to flip out on the comments, whatever, explain to me how, if it was so well put together a storyline, when did Joel, in 5 years, go from being a regular, everyday guy from Texas to Jason Statham from The Transporter? How did he get the training? How was he able to survive in such a hostile world? Where did he learn how to use guns with such capacity, such fluidity? Why was he ever trying to mack at that beautiful piece of ass he was working with? When exactly did he go from being a human to being a monster? When did that happen? 5 years later, Captain America is holding therapy sessions and everyone else is just going about their business like trying to make it like nothing ever happened in Endgame, and that was a bad movie too. But Joel becomes a completely different person. And then when trying to revert back to being what he was, he kills everybody, including shooting a woman dead flat in the head in point blank range for no reason. I mean, where exactly did they establish this happening? Bad shit, people. You love the bad shit if the characters are good. You like the good shit if the characters are bad. I don't even know what it is. You're just all over the place. But what I'm saying is that if you want to call yourselves critics and you have the power to make these people, to call them to task, and you have the attention to get them to listen to what you're saying, be a little bit more educated in what you're saying. Understand what you're complaining about and force them to task, force them to do better. Otherwise, you're just going to get one shitstorm after another, one pathetic, ham-fisted, drummed up pile of trash after another. That's all you're going to get. So if you've got a problem with the way things are in cinema, television, or video games, whatever, blame yourselves. Step up to the plate, do some research, understand what it means to be an artist, understand what it means to be a writer, understand what it takes to make these things, and then call them to task when they completely throw it away. When it's just a cash grab, no interest, no soul, call it to task, and stop liking dumb shit, please. I thank you all for watching. I have more reviews soon to come, so stay tuned, take care, and have a great day.